Hey friends, Mike Myers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, episode number 24, Bryce Drew. About a year ago, I was watching this Pure Mix tutorial with legendary producer Greg Wells, and he was working on a song called Lucky Number with an artist, Bryce Drew, and it was so good. Her voice, the process, it was so interesting that caused me to go to Spotify. I listened to her other songs, Love Life and 21. It caused me to think, man, Bryce seems super chill and easy to talk to. I should have her on the podcast. And in this episode, you're going to discover she's super chill and easy to talk to, but her songwriting is fantastic. And we're going to talk about her process, how she got started, what inspires her, how she gets creative, and the songs that she's working on right now with Greg. So we're going to jump into it. Episode number 24, Bryce Drew. You know, I want to get into your work, your songwriting, your work with Greg Wells. But I really want to go to the start because when I look at your bio, it says, I don't remember life before music. Has music been just part of you?
Yeah, always. I mean, I didn't start writing music until I was 16, but I've been singing my whole life. But even at that turning point, when I wrote my first song, like it is very hard for me to think of the person that I was before I was doing that. It's so hard. I was like, who was I? And did I even exist?
Were you a person, especially like let's say pre-songwriting, pre-guitar, like, you know, trying a little bit of this, trying a little bit of that, going back and forth, like different activities, and it's like nothing really grabbing you?
Yeah, I did hip hop dancing. And I quit the team the day before the recital. I played soccer. I was goalie. Also didn't work out that well. Did gymnastics, horseback riding.
Well, shit, you try that's a jump right there. So many. And
I mean, for the gymnastics talent show, there's a video of this on my Instagram. But when I was like 6 years old, there was a talent show for gymnastics, and everybody was doing all these tumbling routines, and I decided to sing Norah Jones in the middle of the floor while my friend did like back handsprings behind me to Norah Jones. Like that should say it genuinely.
Now, if we just pick apart that, when you were, you know, that song in particular, Norah Jones, what did you have images in your head, even when you were doing these activities of you singing songs and doing that thing, even though maybe you didn't know what that thing was or how to label it, you just allowed your imagination to go there?
Always. I mean, yeah. Well, I was really lucky with the fact that my parents have always been really, really supportive of my brother and I just doing whatever we believe we want to do and it being possible. Like, they never called me crazy. I mean, they knew I was a singer before I think I knew that it was possible to be a singer for real. But yeah, I mean, I have memories of like anytime I would buy an album of playing it and pretending I was that artist and singing in the mirror and just trying to imagine that being my reality.
But isn't that interesting? Because I feel like I hear a lot of stories. I did the same thing. Like, you know, the idea that even when you don't know the technique or the thing behind it, the sort of imagining doing it is almost like bringing it slowly into being.
Yeah, I mean, I totally believe in manifesting in that way. It's like you're deciding who you are and the things that give you life. And
I mean, we could get, you know, when I think of what you're talking right there, I think of Elizabeth Gilbert. She talks a lot about this.
I love
Rob
her
Bell.
so much.
We can just talk about Elizabeth Gilbert and how I think half the time when people ask me about books, I'm always talking about, you need to read Big Magic. Can you just read Big Magic, please? Let's talk after you read Big Magic.
Yeah, it's a life changer. For sure.
I feel for me, it was a game changer in putting the burden off of myself of trying to, but allowing the creativity and to write and the songwriting and production to not feel like it had to be forced, that I was allowing it to come into being, that it already existed. I was just giving it life.
Yeah, you're just the vessel.
Ugh. Now, you were imagining and you were pretending and you stopped in the middle of your gymnastics to be like, I just want to sing Norah Jones to you guys right now. At what was the turning point where it was like, okay, you need to, did it start with guitar?
I got a guitar for my 15th birthday because my brother played guitar. He's more of like a jam band kind of thing. But I was like, I'm the singer in this family. Why are you the one playing guitar? Like, you don't take it seriously enough to play guitar. So I got a guitar for my 15th birthday and I tried to play and I felt like my fingers were just going to fall off. So I didn't play it for a year and the guitar sat under my bed. And then when I was 16, it was a huge turning point in my life with just a lot of people in my family and close family friends just dealing with loss. And I turned to playing guitar and writing to cope with that. So that was when I realized that it was such a big part of my life. And what really drew me into the process, that was it for me. My first song I wrote actually for my grandmother when I was dealing with her suffering from Alzheimer's, and I used to go play for her. So there was just kind of a miraculous moment when one day my whole family was, we all got called to come and say goodbye to her. And my goodbye, I brought my guitar last minute and I played for her. And she came back to consciousness and stayed alive for another 6 months. So after that, I was like, I need to do this.
That is an incredible story.
Yeah.
I think that's the power, just with that, the power of music.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like, there's no other, I had never seen anything like that before, you know?
When I think of you starting out guitar, it was, oh, I'm going to learn guitar. But when you actually picked it up, there was such a purpose and a reason. And I feel when people pick up an instrument at first, there's not always that connection. It seems a very rudimentary kind of like, I'm going to learn the technique of it. But the practice and the connection, that seems to have started right away because you viewed it as a vessel to convey and feelings and emotions, because that's what songwriting is. That's what your story, and that's your story at the beginning is remarkable because that's so powerful.
Thank you. I mean, it is pretty crazy for me to think back because now 16 feels really young for me. And I'm like, oh, that was happening. And that's how I started. But I also think that at the time, I was really inspired by the artists I was inspired by back then. I was learning covers of like Adele and Brandi Carlile. And it was all heavy-hearted confessional music, you know? So that's why I think, because I learned music that was like that from the beginning, and then I had that story happening, it was like that was where I felt the calling, you know?
And as your songwriting kept on going and progressing, did you always view it as, this is a thing I do, or did you view it as like, I think I can do this for a living, this thing right here, songwriting?
Yeah, I mean, I viewed it as, this is what my whole life is going to go towards. Like, there's no other option. Like I said, I was really lucky that my family and the people around me made that seem, I mean, it still seems a little crazy, but I have the team around me and the support that like calm down the delirium a little bit. And I also think, because I ended up going to university in Nashville, where I saw people doing it for a living everywhere, you know, at all levels, not necessarily in front of the camera or on the record, but just even them being a songwriter, it was a game changer to go from playing songs in my bedroom at 16 in Miami, where there really were not many people that were singer-songwriters, to go from that scene to Nashville, where every single person you meet is a songwriter. I was like, okay, there's a world for this, you know?
Now, when you went to college in Nashville, was it for songwriting?
Yeah. So I was a songwriting major and a music business minor.
Did you go to Belmont?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would probably be the place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Then do you know Judy Stakey by chance?
Just by association, she's really
Association.
yeah. She mentored a lot of my friends and is close with my mentor Jody Marr and with Greg as well.
Yeah, Judy is awesome. I was like, I think she has one of her books at the beginning is it when you're a freshman, I think she was saying is one of the books that they have freshmen read, and she does occasional critiques for songwriters at Belmont. But
Yeah.
how was that shift from going to college and viewing songwriting? It was one thing you were actively practicing it. How did it feel to go to school to learn songwriting?
It was amazing. Well, first of all, I felt like I knew nothing. I still kind of do. I mean, you go to a school like that, and starting to write songs at 16 is late. Like, everybody in my class had been writing since they were like 9. And so I was like, yeah, I've been playing guitar for 2 years, and I got into university with the only 3 songs I had ever written. And I honestly I felt like, a lot of people will say like, yeah, go to school for it. Some people will say you don't need that. For me, coming from having only written a few songs and not really ever co-writing with anybody or studying songwriters out of the circle that I love, it was really good for me to write with people out of my genre, to see that whole world and be exposed to it and not dive into it blindly. If I had just moved to Nashville and never had written with anybody else or never had known the business behind the songwriting and the etiquette that happens in a writing session, I think it would have been a lot harder for me to assimilate.
No, that totally makes sense. What were some of your big takeaways that you slowly implemented into your writing or guitar playing or just etiquette? When you say etiquette, some people may be like, well, what is songwriting etiquette?
Well, I think it's just like, it's keeping everything kind of equal in the room, hearing everybody out, like not dominating the session, which can sometimes be frustrating. When you're in a room with somebody who doesn't want to hear any ideas or will say that they came up with everything. It's like things like learning how to not do that, and be aware of it when you are doing that. It's that kind of stuff. And also, I think in Nashville, it's like I was taught so early on, like about equal splits in the session. And, I think preparing for sessions too, like we had all of these exercises of like every week we would come in with like a list of all of these titles and ideas or things we heard from other people that we were told to keep on our phone. Mm-hmm. And it was like training to like always have this bank that you don't know is going to instill an idea. I would never forget my freshman songwriting class. He like took the first 10 minutes out of the class to be like, go on Twitter and scroll through for 10 minutes and write down all of the song ideas you can see. And it was so eye-opening for me because it's like sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm not inspired. But if you really want to be, there are places where you can find things,
At this point, your guitar playing, how would you say that was transforming?
Really quickly. Since I started playing, because I felt late to the game, even though anybody who's like in their 20s and starting to play guitar, you're not late to the game. Pick up the damn guitar.
Not at all.
Pick it up.
You're fine. Don't
ever believe you're late to the game. But I was very like, I'm gonna like keep up with everybody else, and it was also the era of YouTube musicians, and I was just like watching all of these singer-songwriters my age smashing guitar and songwriting, and I was just like, I have to get better than like being really out of time. So I didn't have a social life, and I just played the guitar any moment that I could. Even in high school, I went to arts high school. So my whole life I was in choir magnet in middle school and high school, studying like classical music. And I would have school I would leave for school at 6:30 in the morning, and then I would go straight from school, which ended at 2, to rehearsal until 10 p.m.
God damn.
So, I mean, I look back on it like I was some crazy kid, because that means that I had to learn guitar after 10 p.m., after the longest day of my life. Or I so clearly remember setting an alarm to wake up at 4 in the morning so that I can play before I go to school, because I also had to like leave time to do my homework.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that my guitar playing, I was like, I am going to do this, and I'm going to like put any time that I can into this, and that paid off. I don't know how the hell I did that. That just like...
It's because you found time. It's almost like the myth when people say, oh, there's no time.
Mm-hmm.
You were like, no. I can find time. I'm going to make time.
Yeah.
And probably definitely as you said, your guitar skills got better and better is simply because sometimes people think, oh, do I need to learn this technique? Do I need to do this? Do I know this? Yeah, there's some things, but really it's just making time for it. Like a big steroid boost practice never does that. Like, if somebody says, I did an hour today and that's all I played this week, it's like, that doesn't do anything. But if you said, listen, I found 20 minutes yesterday, I found 20 minutes today, and if you're consistent with it, that's where the technique shows up more and more because you're making the time.
Exactly. I mean, I started learning guitar by covering other songs, which I think is the best way to learn. And my choir teacher saw me playing and was like, I know a really great guy who can like help you with your guitar, and introduced me to a great guitar teacher in Miami just at the second half of my senior year of high school. So not for that long, but the minute that he saw me playing, I really respect this about him. He's like, you don't play like a traditional guitarist. You clearly like didn't sit there and learn all the scales, and like your technique doesn't look taut, and he didn't want to change that. So he was just like, keep doing what you're doing, find the songs that you love and you want to figure out how to use that technique, and I'll help you get that and get the shapes. But like he was really careful to not confine me to a taught way.
I love teachers like that. I had a teacher like that. When I teach, I want to do the same thing. It's your job is not to force the person into a specific mold and be like, this is what it is. And there you go. You can play it so, but they look in, they go, okay, what do you want to do with it? I like what you've got going here. And then they give little tips and tricks, but really their goal is to just make better what you already have and what you're trying to do with it. And I agree with you. Learning songs, other people's songs, is the best window into the instrument and just for songwriting too, because I think
you can feel the flow of everything.
I rewrote When I Come Around maybe like 45 million times, and I didn't care. I just enjoyed being like, yeah, I wrote a song. It's like When I Come Around. That's okay. I'll do another one. And it's just, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Now you go to college, for songwriting. And how did you wind up meeting Greg Wells? And people may know who he is and may not know, but a very, very well-known producer. And I would say he's like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to instrumentation and production. He's just, but very humble and just amazing at what he does. He doesn't worry about like, I've got to follow this trend. He was like, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Greg was a total godsend for me. And he is all of the things that you're talking about. Very, very caring and appreciative and encouraging. He's also the most honest dude I know. In harsh and great ways. And it's all love. But yeah, he is so freaking talented and can play everything. And he also, like my guitar teacher, like he didn't want to touch what I was doing. He just wanted to enhance it. So that was amazing to find.
How did you find Greg? How did you wind up, connecting?
So, funny story. Well, first of all, I kind of feel, I say this a bit, but I feel like I am a product of a lot of the songs that Greg actually worked on. Like I grew up on the music he did.
Mhm.
So it's kind of weird to like now be in his studio and be like, oh, I guess this makes a lot of sense. But he actually came to speak at my school my third year. I graduated in 3 years, so my junior/senior year. He came to speak at my school, and I went. He had produced a song for a friend of mine, Lauren Aquilina, and I messaged her and was like, "Hey, like, don't you know this guy?" And she was like, "Yeah, you should definitely go to that." And I was just sitting there watching him. He was being interviewed by Jody Marr, who worked on the Mika record with him. They had done Grace Kelly together. And I mean, I was so inspired by his speech, by his conversation with her, that I emailed the songwriting department the next morning. And I was like, this is the reason I came to this school. That just changed my life. I think for me, it was like, Belmont is amazing, but every convo, they call them, every like event where they had somebody come speak was always country music. It was always country songwriting, country publishers, country. And I was like, I appreciate country music and the songwriting, but like, I'm not in Nashville to go down Music Row and get a Tim McGraw cut. I mean, I wouldn't be mad about that, but that's not like, I'm an artist, and I'm not a country artist. I would be lying if I said that. So it was huge for me to have Greg, and Jay Hart was there too, to have them there talking about pop music and pop artistry, and Greg talking about Adele and One Republic and Katy Perry as the people he's worked with. Me being like, oh, holy, like nobody's sat in front of me and been like, yeah, this is what my everyday is like, It was very inspiring. But the thing is, like, it was also inspiring because he was so humble about it. And so, like, hey, this could be anybody in this room if you're really hardworking and you have that drive and you have that talent and that, like, thing inside of you that won't let you let it go. And so, I mean, I felt super changed after watching him speak. And I went and said something to him after, but, there were like a million students doing the same thing because there's like a whole auditorium of kids being like, that was nuts. But after I sent that email, they ended up making Jody my mentor for my final semester in college. So I would go meet up with her like once a week and play her like my most recent song, and she would tear it apart for me and just push me to be a way better songwriter. And eventually, after I graduated, I was on a writing trip out to LA, and Jody sent an email telling Greg that I was in town, and he told me to come by his studio the next morning. And I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Totally casual, totally fine. But it was just supposed to be a coffee. Like, it was like a one-line email that was like, Bryce Drew is in town. I really believe in her. If you have time for a coffee. That was it. And I went to his studio to Rocket Carousel in Culver City, which is amazing. I mean, like I said, like he had like plaques of records by my heroes on the wall.
You're like, I know that record, I know that one, and I
waited for a long time. He was working on a record, and I went in to have coffee, and we went from talking about how I started in music, like exactly what we were just talking about, to being like, Greg being amazing. He just looked at me at 30 minutes in and was like, hi, why are you here? And I was just like,
that sinking feeling of,
I was like, is this my shot? And it was my shot. And I took it and I ran, and I was like, I'm here because I think that I keep hearing your name and you keep coming up, and I feel like we would make really great music together. And he was like, oh, wow. Like, that would mean that I would probably need to hear something before I respond to this. Because I had never played him anything. And I was just like, I want to make music with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, from there, I just ended up, he asked me if I had like a link to something or if I wanted to play live. And I was like, no, I want to play live for you, which I had decided if I had that chance to play him anything before I went to see him, I was like, I'm gonna play it live because I know he's a producer, and to hear a song without any production is probably stronger, and it's also just like a more intimate. I'm there, I might as well. I also know that that's like my strong suit is just when I'm with my guitar, you know. So I ended up. Well, he was like, I will never forget. He was like, well, you didn't bring a guitar.
You're like, oh, you got one by chance?
It's like I kind of figured you would have one, and it seemed a little forward to like come to a coffee with a guitar on my back. But it was great. I mean, I played 21 for him first, and he immediately was like, a lot of people need to hear this. And I played Love Life that day and another song, and he was just like, we're going to make a record together.
That also is some of Elizabeth Gilbert shit right there. You saw the name pop up over and over and over again. And some people would be like, oh, that's coincidence. That's a thing that's just happening. And there are other people that go, no, there's a reason. It's almost like the universe dropping little hints for you to be like, keep going. And then you're just following those little road signs until you are there in the studio.
Exactly.
Just being like, well, if I'm going to play you stuff, I need a guitar, Greg. Can I just borrow one? That is wild. And I discovered you because I got a subscription to Pure Mix, and I was like, watch Greg Wells, and write a song from beginning. I'm like, yeah, I do want to see the entire process. And I watch you guys, write a song, one that you brought to him, the production being built. That's wild to watch, and it's probably even more wild to be a part of and work with them in that process of conception and, rewriting to recording the song.
I mean, I'm so glad that you watch that. You've seen my process.
I have.
Crazy.
But it was wonderful because what you were talking about earlier, etiquette, that sort of give and take, that back and forth, there was such a flow between you two when it came to that process. A lot of opening about ideas and like, well, where should the bridge go? Well, let's just try it. Let's see what it was very free flowing and allowing to, okay, when this is good and when we feel like this is where it needs to be and this is strong. Cool. That's it. That's what it needs to be. It was an awesome kind of flow between you two. Thank
you. I mean, yeah, I do think that it is. I feel very grateful that Greg is not only my producer, but that he understands my writing so well and our skills mesh so well together. Like what he did in that bridge, I didn't even think about going there because I walked in with the verse melody and the first verse and the chorus already done, right? But my favorite part of the song is the bridge into the last chorus, and that would not have happened if I didn't let him experiment with that. And to walk in with that trust of like, wherever he's going to take it, let's just see where it goes,
But I think that's the wonderful thing about co-writing. It's sometimes you think you have a complete song, or maybe, some people think I've got the complete song, or they have, oh, this is the strongest part. It's my chorus. It's my verse. But that other person delivers something that it's like, that finish it. And to me, that's the beauty.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to when we were talking about etiquette and stuff, even with the splits and everything. Like, I mean, to me is a 50-50 split right there, because that just changed my entire song. And like without that, it wouldn't feel anywhere as powerful or as special to me. So, I mean, I know back when I was in songwriting class and stuff, it's like we would talk about how one word could change an entire song, genuinely. And it's like it's really hard to try and split up a song that way, because it really is such a joint effort to create this
weird.
thing. Yeah.
It's weird to be like, yeah, you get 12.4
for one. Yeah.
And it's just like,
It's so
really?
messy.
It's just like,
Yeah.
it is. It's messy on split sheets and just like, okay. And then for publishing, you're going to get, you know, this 2, just make it 50-50. It's just like everybody gets an even cut. And also too, then everybody feels invested in the song.
Yeah.
Like nobody's ever felt invested in something like, you know, I was never invested into my, you know, the jobs I did, my part-time jobs, because I was like, this is a temporary, this is nothing. I imagine that's how someone feels when they're like, you only get 2.5.
It's just value too.
Yeah.
Like recognizing the other person's work and effort into everything. I mean, but I am really glad that you caught that series, and it's been really cool to hear from people who have watched it all and feel a part of it. I mean, that was also the first song I ever released.
You're like, that was the first. That's crazy to think that's the first song that you released, but it's such a fantastic song. And then everything around that, you know, from, you know, the start, that is wild, because I think of my first song and I was like, good Lord, I wish it could just, luckily it's buried somewhere.
Like there were many of songs before that song that I thought might have been the first one. And people stopped me, and I'm really glad they did. So, I mean, it is crazy for me to think that I released my first song this year when I'm also telling you that I don't remember my life before music or writing, because there was this whole gap that people don't see of developing it all and writing so many songs, hundreds of songs, before we get these few, you know, or we can pull those out of it and know which ones fully represent me and are telling my story as much as they can.
And it's an interesting story, because I think that's the important part, that it's not good stories. You know, it's a boring story if it's like, yeah, I picked up the guitar and I was great, and the first song I wrote, it was a hit.
The first song I wrote was awful.
Yeah, it was just like, it's
somehow
boring.
It got me into college, but it was awful.
But it's much better to hear like, oh, you know, well, I did this for a little bit. I did this, and you're never going to believe I did gymnastics and I stopped and I sang Norah Jones. And here's what happened after this. I was a goalie in hockey too. And then I went over. It's just, there's so many. It's such a good story because it's yours. I probably quote, you know, Elizabeth Gilbert and Rob Bell more than anyone else. But like Rob Bell goes, you know, who you aren't isn't interesting, because like everyone's story is far more fascinating because it's not a straight and narrow path. It's this little twisty bend all over the place of different avenues to where they are now.
Oh, I think that's the reality. That's human, you know. I'd way rather be believable than all polished and to say, yeah, I've been like, I was writing great pop songs from the start. Completely honest, all of them.
Bryce, thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I love hearing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Was I not right? Super chill and easy to talk to, but most importantly, fantastic music. So if you don't follow her on Spotify, make sure you do that right now and check out that song that I had mentioned at the very beginning that I found her from in that Pure Mix series, Lucky Number. All right, songwriters, we need to have a super heart-to-heart conversation. The cowboy chords and that strumming pattern that you've been reusing for the past 50 songs needs to stop. But don't worry, I'm not chastising you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want to let you know that there's more out there. There are other voicings. There are other strumming patterns. And that's why I'm hosting a free 5-day Songwriting for Guitar boot camp. We're going to be getting you to stop thinking just like a songwriter, but a songwriting guitarist, to actually take control of your instrument. It shouldn't be the other way around. Start finishing those songs. Start tracking your guitar, demoing your work tapes. Start making money with your songs. If that all sounds amazing and one of the things you want to do in 2021, just go to songwritingforguitar.com and claim your spot in the Songwriting for Guitar boot camp. Everything kicks off February 15th.